First, a tape measure is a rewinding steel ribbon, carbon steel, a spring, essentially. We'll talk about layout in a minute, but first I just want to talk about the structure of how the tape works. Stanley tapes have 3 rivets that connect the holder to the end of the tape. That keeps it from fatiguing as quickly here. But you notice how that hook slides? It slides exactly the thickness of the hook. So whether you are getting a pulling measurement or a pushing measurement, the net distance from the surface that is critical to your measurement is going to be the same in reference to the marks on the tape, because that hook will slide its own thickness. If that was rigid, either the pulling measurement or the pushing measurement would be accurate, and the other would be inaccurate by the thickness of the hook. Another feature of the hook on a Stanley tape is that little slot. That receives very nicely the edge of a head of a nail. That enables you to do a couple things. You can drive a nail and hang your tape. You can have a nail and hook your tape on it and have an anchor point that won't come off no matter how the wind is blowing. And it also turns your tape into a compass. Watch this. You drive it down until it's about 1/4 of an inch away from your substrate. You hook your tape onto that nail, and then let's say I wanted a 48-inch diameter circle. I can draw a perfectly uniform arc. Pretty handy. There are times when you can use the hook on the tape as a pencil for marking a cut, depending on where you are and if you want to save a few moments. If I've got to cut this 2x4 off at 39 inches, I can mark 39 with my thumb, scribe it with the hook, so a tape measure will even make sort of a low-grade straight edge if you're in a hurry and need to get an approximate rough line. Pull it tight. Now that's not a perfect line, but sometimes it's all you need. Your tape measure is a scribe. It's a gauge. Let's say I need an 8-inch butt cut off this piece of plywood. Put the 8, hold it against your index finger, hold the pencil tight against the hook. You'll see drywallers do that all the time, but a framer can do it too. So in the United States, framing structures to accommodate 4x8 sheets of plywood, 16-inch layout is very standard. Stanley facilitates that nicely with framing the 16-inch layout in red with a black arrow at both sides of the tape. 16, 32, 48, 64 to the end of the building. So it's very intuitive that 1 foot and 2 foot are also layout values for an 8-foot 4x8 sheet of plywood that work, and Stanley marks those with a big black arrow marked the same way at every foot layout. A lot of people don't know there's another layout on a Stanley tape that works with an 8-foot dimension beautifully, and I've used it on this little roof system. Check it out. 0, 19 3/16 indicated by that little black square. 38 3/8 indicated by that little black square. So as with the 16-inch layout, the 19 3/16 inch layout is extended for the whole length of the tape. So if you've got a roof system that the engineer has called out the 19-inch center, a Stanley tape will do it. Gotta love a Stanley tape. So the standard Stanley construction issue tape measure, 1 inch wide, will extend 7 feet from the support of your hand and remain rigid. That's pretty handy for pointing out specific topics of conversation, where you need another nail, where something needs to be fixed or straightened. It also is handy when you're down on the ground and you need to get up and hook something. That's why a 1 inch wide tape is a labor saver compared to a shorter, floppier, weaker tape. Now Stanley has taken that concept of extending a tape measure one step further with their Fat Max series. This is a 25-foot Fat Max. The blade width on this is 1 1/8, almost 1 3/16. This thing will remain rigid for 11 feet. Think of that. I can hardly believe it sometimes. That's a long ways. You can reach up and hook something a long ways away. No ladder required. Pretty nice. So I don't know what kind of tape you use, but if you're familiar with it and it has all of the characteristics, all of the features that you need, use it. Because one sure way to make an expensive layout mistake is switch tapes. You're not familiar with the font, you're not familiar with the coloring, you're not familiar with how they indicate the layout. You make a layout bobble, it could cost. So if it works for you, use it. But my experience is Stanley is the versatile tool. So the elephant in the living room is this. Why are we stuck with the Imperial system? I don't have an answer for that, and it's not my fault. So I grew up learning the Imperial system. I love it. It's how my brain works. It's how I visualize numbers. It's how I estimate distances. I'm unable and unwilling to change. But you metric users have got a point and an advantage. Having said that, one advantage of the Imperial system is it's a pretty good math trainer. It gives a kid a reason to understand fractions and fraction decimal conversions early, perhaps. I know you guys know all that stuff too, but I'm just trying to justify what it is that I use. So, being stuck with an Imperial system and an Imperial tape, did you know that this is a little slide rule? For instance, let's make up a couple numbers. Let's say that I have to subtract 3 feet 2 7/8 from 8 feet 9 1/4. I go 8 feet 9 1/4 with the end of the tape.
Hold on. 8 feet 9 1/4, yeah.
I come back down to where 3 feet 2 7/8 intersects the other side of the tape. And the answer to our problem is 66 1/4 inches. 5 feet 6 1/4 inches. Bam, that's pretty quick. You can do that with big numbers. You can do that with as big a number as you can roll your tape out for. Let's say I'm going to subtract 7'6" from 18 foot 2 1/2. 18 foot 2 1/2.
Hold on. 18 feet 2 1/2.
And I'm going to subtract 7'6". Now you may have already done that in your head. You metric guys are pretty sharp. 7'6" is 10 foot 8 1/2. It's kind of a parlor trick, but we like parlor tricks. Check out my string video if you don't believe me. So an Arizona carpenter or Las Vegas carpenter, I worked in Las Vegas for 8 years, will have tapes that last for 2 or 3 years sometimes, unless they get stepped on or just wear out. You know, the mylar coating wears off the back and they get rough. But when you're working in a rainy environment in the Pacific Northwest, where 6 or 8 months of the year you're in the rain, and 6 or 8 months of the year you're in the mud, and your tape is always collecting water and dirt and mud, they wear out fast. So if you have a chance, keep your tape dry. And never stick it into a 5-gallon bucket of water and swish it around thinking that you're going to clean it up. You're not. You're going to kill it. So keep your tape dry. You can oil it if you want, but that just makes the dust adhere. So I almost forgot. There's a spring-loaded clip, a spring on the back for slipping it onto your pocket or onto a belt. It comes off with a Phillips screw. The spring is relieved. It's got a cutout in the middle, makes kind of a hole that can be used to hang the tape on a pegboard or something. That's kind of handy. Doesn't do much for me because I just kind of broadcast my tapes wherever I happen to be, and I have a hard time finding one. One of the reasons for that is because if it's in my bags, and I go to my bags and I pull it out, and I use it in the shop, and I leave it on my pocket, sometimes I go home with it. So it's a good idea to take the clip off of the back of one of your tapes. Some bags, the tape pocket is so tight that it won't fit with the clip on there. But I tend to take one off and dedicate it just to riding around in my bags. It reduces the likelihood of me pulling it off on some other project and not getting it back. One other thing, you know, I did that thing about subtracting, using this as a slide rule. If you're not comfortable with numbers, if you're not strong with numbers and they bug you, it obviously can be used as a cross-check on the dividing number in two. You know, if you've got to divide 9'8.5" in two real quick, and you do the math but you're not sure, you can just put the end of the tape on the number and look down at the end, and it looks like it's about 58¼ inches. You know, that's easy, intuitive. You probably already figured that out. You may not need to, but there are lots of things you can do with the tape that you may not have thought of, and I've undoubtedly not mentioned all of them. So do me a favor, if you're aware of some other tape tricks, shortcuts, ways to use a Stanley tape that I haven't pointed out or thought of, let me know. Put it in the comments. I love to learn from you. I really appreciate what you did for me on the octagon scale, on the framing square. Thanks, and I look forward to whatever else you can contribute.